the second ram known as in the consecration of Aaron and his sons as priests? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of Exodus on walking through the Bible.
Glory of his cross.
If you have a Bible with you, turn to Exodus 29. We're going to be reading from verses 19 to 25. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So, Exodus 29, beginning at verse 19. You shall also take the other ram, and Aaron and his sons shall put their hands on the head of the ram. Then you shall kill the ram, and take some of its blood, and put it on the tip of the right ear of Aaron, on the tip of the right ear of his sons, on the thumb of their right hand, and on the big toe of their right foot, and sprinkle the blood all around on the altar. And you shall take some of the blood that is on the altar, and some of the anointing oil, and sprinkle it on Aaron and on his garments, on his sons, and on the garments of his sons with him. And he and his garments shall be hallowed, and his sons' garments with him. Also you shall take the fat of the ram, the fat tail, the fat that covers the entrails, the fatty lobe attached to the liver, the 2 kidneys, and the fat on them, the right thigh, for it is a ram of consecration. 1 loaf of bread, 1 cake made with oil, and 1 wafer from the basket of the unleavened bread that is before the Lord. And you shall put all these in the hand of Aaron and in the hands of his sons, and you shall wave them as a wave offering before the Lord. You shall receive them back from their hands and burn them on the altar as a burnt offering, as a sweet aroma before the Lord. It is an offering made by fire to the Lord. In this chapter, we still have Moses on Mount Sinai receiving instructions from God as to how to build the sanctuary and how to set up the priesthood. In chapters 25 through 27, we had the building of the sanctuary. We had instructions on how to make the Ark of the Covenant and mercy seat, how to build the showbread table, how to build the golden lampstand and the altar of burnt offering, and where they would be placed in the sanctuary. We also had the instructions for how to build the tabernacle itself, including the holy place and the most holy place, as well as the court of the tabernacle. In chapter 28, we had the instructions for the priestly garments. There was a difference between the high priest's garments and the common priest's garments. However, both were special garments that would sanctify them from among the people. Coming to the first 37 verses of this chapter then, we have God's instructions for consecrating Aaron and his sons as priests. We have already discussed how they were to bring 1 young bull and 2 rams without blemish, along with unleavened bread, unleavened cakes mixed with oil, and unleavened wafers anointed with oil. Aaron and his sons were then to be washed, after which Aaron would be clothed in the high priest's garments and anointed with oil as high priest. Aaron's sons were then to be clothed in their priestly garments and consecrated as priests as well. They were then to receive their sashes, and Aaron's sons their hats, and become the priests of the Lord, a priesthood that was to remain in their family for as long as the law of Moses stood. After this, Aaron and his sons were to collectively sacrifice a bull as a sin offering to the Lord, and then offer the first ram as a burnt offering to the Lord, which brings us down to verse 19. If you recall back in verse 1, there were to be 2 rams involved in the consecration ceremony. Like with the first ram, Moses was to kill it, while the head was being held by Aaron and his sons. What happens next with the blood of this ram might sound peculiar to us, but since it was commanded by God, if one was to have faith, one would do what God said. Some of the blood was to be placed on the tip of the right ear, the thumb of the right hand, on the big toe of the right foot of Aaron and his sons. Was there any significance to this? We're not exactly told, but one possibility for these body parts being chosen is that the ear would represent hearing the truth, the hand would represent doing the right things, and the foot would represent walking in the righteous paths. Although these make sense, let's remember this is only speculation, and therefore we should not be dogmatic about these conclusions. The rest of the blood, like that of the first ram, was to be sprinkled around the altar, meaning the altar of burnt offering. Following this, some of the blood that was on the altar, along with some of the anointing oil, was to be taken and sprinkled on Aaron and on his garments, and on Aaron's sons and on the garments of Aaron's sons. What this did was hallow or consecrate the garments of the priests and the priests themselves. The part of the ceremony concerning the second ram, hereafter referred to as the ram of consecration, was not done, however. What happened next to that was that the fat of the ram, the fat tail, the fat that covers the entrails, the fatty lobe attached to the liver, the 2 kidneys and the fat on them, the right thigh, 1 loaf of bread, 1 cake mixed with oil, and 1 wafer from the basket of unleavened bread from verse 3 was to be placed in the hands of Aaron and in the hands of his sons. What were they to do with these items? They were to wave them as a wave offering before the Lord. What this means is that the pieces were swung from side to side before the Lord. Again, this might look silly, but if you were to have faith in God, you would do as he commanded. After the wave offering was offered, Moses would receive these pieces of the ram back and then burn them on the altar of burnt offering. Like with the burnt offering discussed earlier in this chapter, this burnt offering would be a sweet aroma to the Lord, meaning that the Lord would be pleased with the offering when done according to his will. With that, our time is up for today. Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Exodus 29, verses 26 to 30, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time.
I'm not ashamed.
Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.